Okay.
All right. My Post-it note ripped off.
We're live.
Okay. Call the meeting to order. Want to do the roll call, Richard?
I don't remember everybody's name.
You don't remember everybody's name? Okay.
Otis Marsh, I'm here.
Carly Byer, I'm present.
Tor Benson, I'm present.
Richard Burke, present.
Chris Fry, present. Is Dave on the phone?
I haven't heard him yet.
Terrible at names.
So am I.
Dave?
So he'll probably be joining us shortly. Do we have any changes to the previous meeting's minutes? Hearing none, do we have approval of previous meeting's minutes?
I move we approve them, as are.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Do we have any, we do have an amendment to the agenda. Under new business, there is another trail discussion that needs to be brought up, making connection to the new boardwalk to Mountain View Manor. So we've got a map of it here. It's been proposed by PIA. Any other amendments?
Under discussion item B, just an update on revising the zoning code.
Okay. Okay.
I move that we accept the agenda as amended.
A second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Seeing as our two new members have already done the oath of office, we need to move on to election of officers. Do you have any nominations for chair?
I think you're amazing, so I nominate you, Chris Fry.
Okay.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Nominations for vice chair? I think Dave's been doing a great job. I'll nominate Dave.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Nominations for secretary?
Yes,
Richard has been our secretary, so.
I don't mind keeping doing it.
nominate Richard.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Moving on to public hearings. You want to do just one motion to open the public hearings and then just move through them one at a time? Or do you want to do a motion each time?
It's easier for minutes and things like that. Just open it up and then
Okay.
accept all the testimony and then close it at the end.
All right. So do we have a motion to open the public hearing?
I so move.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The first public hearing is for an application from Rob and April O'Neill for a variance from the side yard setback requirement to allow an enclosure of an existing deck 7 feet from the property line at 610 Sandy Beach Road. Do we have any public testimony to this public hearing?
Yeah, the applicants are out of town, so. Oh, applicants are out of town. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Okay. If there's no public testimony, we'll move on to the next one. Public hearing for an application from Amber and Forrest Parsley for a conditional use permit to allow a trailer during construction in a rural residential district at 779 Mitkoff Highway. Do we have any public testimony to this public hearing? Seeing none, let's move on to a public hearing for an application from Chris Noros to purchase borough-owned property at 919 Sandy Beach Road.
Hi, I'm Chris Norris, and first I wanted to thank
Sorry
the plan.
about mispronouncing.
Oh, that's okay. First, I just wanted to thank the Planning Commission for postponing action on this item when it came up earlier this summer. I know summer's a hard time to get everybody together, and I appreciated you waiting until this meeting when I could be in town. As you can see from my application, I wish to purchase an easement that's approximately 50 feet that runs along my property at Sandy Beach. It's Lot N. You have the paperwork in front of you. It should be under item 9G. I know that the city is, the borough is considering selling Lot 10, and I would like to purchase that easement for a variety of reasons. One is to keep a buffer in a natural state between me and whoever buys that property, to allow for some access and to allow for continued use of a pullout that's been there. It's kind of hard to tease out all these different issues because my request actually relates to a number of other items on your agenda. And I just wanted to make sure, and I made some new copies of a map so that you know exactly what I'm talking about, that I'm not looking at purchasing the whole easement from the beach all the way up to Sandy Beach Road, but just that portion that's adjacent to Lot N. So I'd like to pass those maps out to you. I might.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks.
And then the other item that I'd like to pass out is a letter that I wrote just a short while ago. It came to my attention that in agenda item 10B that there were some false statements made concerning this pullout and buildings on my property, and I felt like it's important to set the record straight. The letter is actually addressed to the Petersburg Borough Assembly, and it's really upsetting to me to read it because as a property owner, I'm being accused of building a pullout and a shop building with improper permits or no permits. And I just want you to know that when I purchased Lot N from the state of Alaska in 1979, the driveway and the pullouts were existing. I haven't done anything to change them. I haven't increased their size. I haven't changed their location. And prior to building the shop, it came before planning and zoning. I obtained a building permit. That building permit was posted while the building was going up, and the building inspector came out a number of times. So I just feel like, my integrity is important to me, and that it's important to set the record straight. So I'd like to submit a written letter that speaks to what I just said. Besides objecting to what I think are false statements, I also object to the suggestion that I should suffer consequences as a result of said action. so, I need to be heard publicly on this. And so I know you have a lot of documents in front of you, and it's really important to have things as true as they can be. And so that's why I want to submit this. At any rate, in terms of the use of this easement, it's not my intention to build anything on it. It's not my intention to turn around and subdivide my lot and sell bigger lots. It's just my intention to have some kind of buffer. When I purchased this property in 1979, it was green space. It's been that way for public use. And to suddenly have it being considered to be rezoned is pretty upsetting because in my mind, it devalues the value of my property. What's made it special to me is that there's lots of big trees around, that there's a sense of privacy, and it's difficult to see after 37 years of owning it to have this be considered to be rezoned. It's a huge upheaval to me, and I think you probably have some information that other people feel the same way, whether they're an adjacent owner or members of the public. So I'll leave it at that. I know you have a long agenda, but I do hope to be able to speak to the other agenda items as they come up, because they're also intertwined. Thanks for the opportunity to testify.
Is there any other testimony to this public hearing? Seeing none, we'll move on to a public hearing for a proposed pedestrian trail within the undeveloped right-of-way at Odin Street between Queen Street and Noseam Street and Pearl F. Street between Lumber Street and Hogue Alley.
Thank you.
My name is Susan Harai. I'm Petersburg Indian Association's professional engineer and licensed land surveyor. Petersburg Indian Association had on their long-range transportation plan a proposed trail from the fire station to Severson subdivision. It was put on there because Zeke McFarland, a previous Parks and Rec director, thought it was a good idea to tie that subdivision in to the post office. So we added it to our LRTP. We have since gone out and gone on the ground and done reconnaissance with distance and bearings, and we have found that it is not possible at this time to build that trail, mostly because the airport boundary abuts the shop, the public works shop. It's so close that there's not enough distance. The trail would actually be running along the edge of the shop there. So unless we could get an easement on the airport boundary, I would think of like 200 feet at least. This really isn't a viable trail at this time. The only piece of the trail that is viable, and I'd kind of like the public to consider, would be from Noseam to Queen Street, and it would be a raised boardwalk that Petersburg Indian Association is now building one similar on Honey Point Trail. And it's about 1,400 feet, and why that would be nice is that the people from the subdivision could walk that boardwalk to Noseam, and they could make a nice little circle there back to their subdivision, walking their dogs for recreation purposes or whatever. So it's just a tiny little trail, but the purpose is that these trails are accessible to the people of Petersburg, and so many trails are built in this part of town where we are now, and we're just trying to reach out and so that other people where they live could enjoy, trails and nature. So I just want to let everybody here know that we are not interested in, or we can't build at this time, the proposed trail from the fire hall to Severson's, just from Queen Street to Nosium, which is 1,400 feet, and it's through the Muskeg. And it's along a platted right-of-way. So, thank you very much.
Question? Yes. Why do you have to have a raised trail?
Well, the reason, to get a Corps of Engineers permit, you have to rededicate wetlands so that, because you're taking wetlands out, out of there. So we could do a gravel trail. It takes longer. And what happened with
How many permits are longer?
Yes,
Okay.
definitely. Because the borough has to dedicate wetlands. For those wetlands, take it out. So you'd have to figure out what wetlands you wanted to dedicate. Is that correct, Liz?
Right, you would have to mitigate, depending on how much you're going to be displacing, how much you're going to be filling, you might have to mitigate by dedicating a conservation easement of some other patch of wetland to make up for what you're using, and it's usually 2 or 3 to 1. So if you're, 2 or 3 times what you're filling for the Corps to give you the permit. So, but it would depend on the size of what you're actually filling.
Doesn't seem like it'd be much, but I don't know.
Well, it depends on how big the trail is, so maybe
Yeah.
the original version is different than the abbreviated version, so.
Also, the Hungry Point Trail is wheelchair accessible. It's kept to a 5% grade. So these other trails, they're very difficult for people that are handicapped to take a walker or a wheelchair over. I think with more maintenance, they probably would be fine. It also depends on the grade. Anything over 5% is too steep, and the existing trail is too steep. And it becomes a glacier once it freezes. It just builds up. So it's very treacherous. So this is our first boardwalk in town. We've had the one out at Blind River Rapids, and we can see how it works out. But the comments we've heard so far are all positive. So,
Okay.
but we could do a gravel one. It's, we're open to that too.
Either way, they'd have to tear up a gravel one to put a road in the future, in that right away.
Wouldn't go on top of it.
Any additional testimony to this public hearing? Yes, please come up.
Okay, I'm not sure if this is the right time to say whatever you're supposed to say.
Say your name.
Oh, I'm Catherine Schneider.
Okay.
And I'm very supportive of having trails built among our neighborhood roads to open opportunities for families, kids, older people to walk safely. This, to me, makes sense to build this trail, assuming there's support from the people in the neighborhoods. I would encourage, where possible and where the grade is sufficient, to do a gravel trail over a boardwalk trail. And I just also wanted to really say thank you to PIA for an incredible job they've been doing in building trails in the community in the last few years. Thank you.
I'm Alice Kumps, and I live on Nosium Street. We're the last house, and we own the smokery at the end of the road there. Not quite at the end, but we're the last house residents. Our initial concern was that when the trail was longer and that it was going to cut through. We're not as concerned now that it's just going from Odin to our street. However, just something maybe to consider. We do see a lot of foot traffic late at night, early in the morning that we don't like to see. And so that's just a concern for us that we might see more of it on that short little trail out in the Muskeg. A lot of it loops around coming from the Lumber Street side because there is a trail there that loops back through. So that is a slight concern for us. We're not super concerned since it's just connecting Odin to Nosium, but just something to consider, I think. We're just worried about the other unwanted traffic. But in general, we like the idea of having trails available. Our children love the idea of being able to just walk through to Odin Street without having to go on the busy street. The concern we have.
there any additional testimony?
Hello, I'm Denise Laux, and my property was greatly affected before the change. And you have my letter, and I just have a couple questions that were raised by. So if we build this boardwalk, this short boardwalk, who's going to maintain that boardwalk? Is that something that's going to go into the city? Is that going to be maintained by the city? And if any,
She needs to come up to the microphone.
Come up to the microphone. But
Petersburg Indian Station has a maintenance program, and so we plan on maintaining the boardwalks.
okay. Okay. If the airport was to give the variance that you would need to continue that, would we be having this meeting again? Because I'm looking at the map and that trail, proposed trail that goes behind Casino Street. Looks like it's right there. You have my letter, you know how.
I would assume that what we're talking about is just the 1,400-foot section at this point.
At this point, yeah.
At this point.
So
if that comes available and it comes to lengthening that, there'll be another meeting. Okay. I support Alice's concern about the foot traffic as well.
Is there any additional testimony? Seeing none, let's move on. Yeah?
Is this in your packet, this letter from, it's not Aaron Phillips?
I think it was just handed
letter-
to me.
It was on the
You want
table.
this?
Is this the time you want to read it into the record, or do you want to wait till to the deliberation stage? I mean, this is, the reason I bring that up is that this is, his concerns are stated in this letter, and this abbreviated section, this abbreviated boardwalk, he's the most effective, he owns that whole block.
Okay.
So he's affected by about 300 feet of this boardwalk. And so I just want, I don't know what it's time that you read this into the record for your member.
Should we do it now, or?
Well, it's up to you, either now or during the
You want-
deliberation
Seems like
stage.
this is public
Yeah.
testimony.
Do you want to go ahead and read that?
I could if you wanted to.
Or do you want?
It doesn't matter to me.
It doesn't matter to me.
Go ahead, Joe.
It's just, I said, it's just, I don't know if it's the time, but I said he
Yeah.
seems to be the most effective
Yeah.
landowner.
It's appropriate.
My name is Aaron Phillips, and I'm writing this letter due to my personal concerns about the proposed pedestrian trail that connects Odin Street to the existing U.S. Post Office trail. I've been a resident of Petersburg for about 18 years and now intend to stay indefinitely. I just recently bought the Block 214 plot of the Bushman Addition subdivision and plan on constructing a residential home, hopefully in the next 3 to 5 years. My concerns with this trail deal with the amount of my personal privacy, safety, trash, and budget, each of which I will further explain separately. I bought this plot knowing my future home would have a certain amount of privacy due to the small and quiet Queen Street neighborhood and I having only one neighbor within a close vicinity to my property. This trail will run parallel to the entire length of my property boundary and will be very close proximity as well. The increase in pedestrian traffic and lack of visual obstacles between my property and the trail would mean a lot of pedestrians would see directly into my home and property and would greatly diminish the amount of privacy I have. I am also concerned about safety both to the pedestrians and myself and the possibility of me being liable if an accident were to occur on my property, as this would be my main residence in the future and I would be driving in very close proximity to the beginning of the trail quite frequently. In the winter months, the amount of daylight diminishes drastically, and knowing that the rest of the residential area has very poor public lighting. I am worried that visibility of the area and possible the pedestrians will be very poor and an accident could occur. I also have a small worry about the theft of my personal things and property. With no amount of current visual and physical obstructions, anyone can see any personal property that I have and can easily access it. This can lead to stolen property and pedestrians trespassing on my property, which is in the worst case scenario could lead to injury and possibly death, and I could be liable for. Obtaining a fence and foliage to deter this would be very costly due to the length of my property that runs parallel to the trail. With an increase of pedestrians, walkers, runners, bicyclists, and domestic animals comes an increase in trash and pet excrement, both on trails and surrounding areas. Another concern of mine is that trash and excrement, which inevitably make its way onto my property. This is not to say that everyone who uses a trail will dump trash and let their pets defecate on the trail and my property, but I know that it does happen. It does happen both intentionally and unintentionally, and cleaning it up will probably become a regular chore of mine. With that being said, I would personally like to see the portion of the trail near my property moved to another location that would not run so close to mine or anyone's personal property. If proposed trail were to get the green light exactly the way it is, I would suggest a well-lit area around the beginning of the trail for pedestrian safety reasons and some trash cans that were well maintained. One last concern I have is how much this will cost the borough of Petersburg if this amount of money could be put to better use, like existing road maintenance, school budget, improvement of our harbor. Thank you for reading, and I hope you take my concerns into consideration. Aaron Phillips.
Thank you, Joe.
A long one.
Yes, Karen.
I will follow my own orders.
My name is Karen Malcolm. I'm the secretary here. I had a request from another citizen that wanted to comment on this, and I thought it was going to be later on in the meeting. I have just texted her and told her it was going on now, and I gave her the phone number here, but can she address this when you go into your deliberation if she doesn't get here right now?
Fine with me if it's fine with the rest of the commission.
Okay, thank you.
If there's no additional testimony at this time, let's move on to an application from Timothy and Polly Kuhneman to purchase borough-owned property at 919 Sandy Beach Road. Come up.
My name's Tim Keeneman. My wife and I live at 917 Sandy Beach Road. We bought that property in 1972. There have been 3 or 4 different occasions now that I provide information to the city that describes the history of what's gone on with that property. You have my application to purchase. I'm not a surveyor, nor am I a draftsman. As I went through my application on the site survey for the city, there's still about 20 feet between the strip that I'd like to buy and the strip that Ms. NeRose wants to buy. I agree with Chris. The most frustrating portion of this to me, number one, was when the city chose to select the property from the state, because that occurred after I applied to buy the property from the state. And you'll see that in a letter that I'd sent both to you and to the assembly before. And then to have it zoned as green zone and go ahead and make the investments that I've gone in my property. And then now it's going to go back to public use. And all property owners in the town make significant investments in their land. And without knowing what's going on next to you, it's hard to make those investments wisely. I would prefer that the city rezone it as green zone and just leave it there undeveloped. That's my personal preference. But if that's not going to happen, then that's why I submitted the application to buy the property. It will allow me to take down some of the trees, which I now find branches in my yard during windstorms that the city doesn't want to deal with. And if you think that the width or the direction of the line that I want to buy is improper. As I said in my last paragraph, that I'm willing to compromise on that. If and I agree with Chris that in a little bit different light, one of the functions I see of planning and zoning is to recognize neighborhoods, the characteristics of those neighborhoods, and protect them so that when people do make investments, those investments are protected. And I guess that's what I have. You have all the information in front of you, so I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Do you have any questions right now, or do we want to just hold off on that till we're doing our discussion?
Probably until the discussion.
I think we'll discuss.
I do appreciate all the effort you put in, Tim. There was quite a bit of information for me to go over last night, and I appreciate that.
You're sure welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, Chris, I don't know if you can hear me. This is Dave Pence here.
Yeah.
Yeah, hey, I was able to get, I had the wrong code for the call-in, but I heard all the public testimony, and my understanding is we're going to discuss this more in depth at a later point in the meeting. Is that correct?
Yes. Do you have any additional testimony on this purchase? Yes.
I'm Catherine Schneider, and I'm just kind of a little bit confused about the process here of how their requests to purchase and where the comments come in relation to your item under new business to, let's see. Or unfinished business, I forget which was proposing to change the zoning to single family or to change it to, or the proposal to have it as parkland. So I'm not quite sure where we start discussing our, or.
Well, during this part is the public hearing where we accept testimony from the public, then we move on to our discussion, and then we just usually get questions answered at that time on specific topics where the commission is asking questions to the public.
Okay, so this comment of mine is, I guess, to both of theirs, but it's just that, to me, it doesn't seem appropriate to sell the land and that it should stay within, city ownership, as was presented by some people at the previous meeting, I believe. I mean, I think it's valuable in its location, even if we have no plans to use it at this point. It's property that can never be regained. And in terms of being a waterfront community and a marine community, I think it's really important to maintain it in that setting.
So I think this might be two things. It's like first the decision to sell it, or I guess put it from green zone into residential. That's like the first decision. If that happens, then these two people are saying they're interested in buying it.
Okay. So then when do we, so the second part of the question is the one I'm interested in, is, whether or not to change the zoning so it can be sold.
That's the first question now.
Right. So when do we comment on that?
Now's a good time as any.
Okay. So that's my proposal. And if there's some, historical right-of-way issues to deal with, or some things, where minor boundaries have to be adjusted to accommodate some concerns that way, with it still being maintained with the city for potential other use, for non-sale, non-single family, then I think that's appropriate to deal with that too. I didn't say that very well.
Do you have any additional testimony on this public hearing? Seeing none, let's move on to a public hearing for an application from Don Konings and Gloria Ulmer for variance from the front yard setback requirement to cover an existing porch 14 foot from the property line at 801 Sandy Beach Road.
John Hogue. I am here on behalf of Don and Gloria because they're headed south today for medical reasons. I'm also their next door neighbor, and I would hope the commission, without too much controversy, would go ahead and grant this permit. And I would suggest in the future, considering amendments to the borough code, so frankly this doesn't have to show up on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any additional testimony on this matter? Seeing none, at this time, let's close the public hearing. Do we have a motion to do so?
I so move.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I think you said you were going to allow additional testimony from Melina? Oh, okay. So maybe
If she
she calls in, you're going to allow
Yeah,
her
we'll
to...
allow it during her
Okay,
discussion.
so you might just make note that...
Yeah.
Okay. I have been texting madly. Karen Malcolm,
Yes.
typist. Melina Marvin, was interested in testifying in support of the entire trail. However, since I've told her that that part isn't what it began as, she's listening as we speak. So if she can hear me and wants to speak up, she can. If not, then I think we're good.
I'm here, Karen. Can you guys hear me?
Yes. Yes, we can.
I guess I just wanted to add that there is a lot of support on Lumber Street for pedestrian pathway over to the other town center where the post office is. I guess we missed that agenda item. It sounds like there's some problems with that, but I would just assert that there's so many of us who've been wanting that for so long. I was wondering if we could continue discussion of that in some way and look for some problem solving there.
Yes.
Hi, it's Susan Harai. When we looked at it, preliminary surveying and engineering, it looks like it could only be done if we moved out probably 200 feet. And that's in all directions out, so it would be away from the existing residences, because right now the trail is so close. It's within 100 feet, 50 to 100 feet of residences, and the bank, the side slope is so steep. So if we did get an easement from the airport and could move it far away from existing residences, then it would be something I think would be very beneficial to people on the other side of town. But at this point, that is not a possibility. I mean, we have to pursue that with the state of Alaska. So that's where we're at right now.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for the update, and I certainly empathize with residences who don't want maybe the trail going right through their wild backyard. But just wanted to point out that many of us were wanting to petition the city in regard to this trail anyway before we even heard about PIA's proposal. So there's a lot of support, and I think a lot of enthusiastic people who would be willing to help problem solve. If we could just keep the conversation open and see if there isn't a solution that might work for everyone involved over time.
I think we'll have to address that at a later date as far as the Planning Commission goes concerning the that portion of the trail. I think what we've decided at this point is we're just going to be concerned with the 1,400 feet of the trail that they're proposing between Noseum and what is that? Queen Street. So.
Thanks.
Okay. If there's no further testimony to any of these matters, do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
I so move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Do we have any visitors' views related to agenda items? Do we have any?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Chair, you will be recognizing anybody that wants to speak during the discussion items on agenda items?
Yeah.
Yeah, the reason I bring that up is Parsley's are, and then any questions you have,
Any questions?
you know,
Yeah.
and it would be, because the Parsley's on their question, they're, I'm going to believe going to get on the phone, they're kind of remote, so.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Do we have any visitors' views unrelated to agenda items? Liz, do we have any staff reports?
No.
No. Okay. Moving on to unfinished business. Review of a conditional use permit issued to Everett Kissinger to operate a home occupation at 7095 Mitkoff Highway. I believe you guys have all that information here.
Starts on.
Has anybody had a chance to get out and talk to Everett? I've been out of town for 3 weeks, so I have not.
I went out and talked to him.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Oh. Everett, would you like to come up and answer some questions for the commission, please?
There's a few new planning commissioners, so
yes,
probably new to this issue since we last talked about it. I guess I'm just here to answer any questions you might have. Very briefly, you know, I've operated that mill since 1996. We first just bought the small mill to build our own house, our own shop, and after that was more or less completed, and I started doing for other folks, you know, sort of as a small business. And then we operate in a rural residential area. And we're just continuing to do that. The issue that has come up in the past is noise from one of the neighbors, Russ Spears. Is here. We've tried to do what seemed feasible to alleviate that to the extent that we could. That's a very small operation, you know, less than 20,000 board feet per year. I do almost all custom cutting. Almost all free use for folks, you know, they get free use wood from the forest. About it. I guess I'm just here to answer any questions you might have in your review.
I wanted to verify, Everett, you did move the sawmill from near Russ's property to the other side of your property? Did I read that a few years ago, back in the documents? No, it's still in its original location?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, we considered that, and it just didn't work out.
How big is the distance, do you think, between one side of your property to the other? 100 feet?
Somewhere in that ballpark, yeah.
Okay. And your property up above is cleared, so it wouldn't have a buffer, whether you moved it from one side to the other with any trees or anything, because it's all
no, that would be
open.
Through there, yeah.
Okay.
Operationally, it didn't work out very well because I have a machine shop in the wrong location to move it, and then everything would be operating backwards. And the other thing, you know, where it is now, the mill is in a, well, it's actually a 2 or 3 sided building with open. So now it directs most of the noise away from Russ's place. I moved it on the other side, it would direct it toward Russell's place. So I think that 100 feet wouldn't buy us anything. I had made some improvements to the building, completed the siding on there, and did a little bit of insulation. That's about it in a nutshell. Any other questions?
Not right off. Thank you.
Not exactly sure what
Yes.
we're supposed to be doing here on that
Is
one.
Mr. Beers here? Yes. Mr. Beers, can you come up and...
Yeah, I'm Russ Beers.
Yes, thank you. Has it made any substantial changes? The extra work on the building that he's done and stuff?
I haven't noticed any difference in the noise level as it reaches my house.
Okay. Has he been doing a better job of keeping the hours of operation?
As far as I can tell, he's within the hours of that's in his permit.
Okay. Any other questions from the commissioners?
I guess, I don't know, there's not much room for compromise in your mind, it's just kind of an owner. I don't know, you'd rather get rid of it altogether?
Well, that was my preference when we met last year about this time. I got the impression from the commissioners that they weren't really considering having Everett move it to a more, what I consider a more appropriate zoning place. And they asked Everett if he could try to do something to reduce the noise as I get it from my place. And I met with Everett shortly after our meeting, and it seemed like I asked him if the only thing I could think of was if he could move it further away from my property. And he said he would consider it, and I guess that's where we left it. I still have to admit that I feel the commission many years ago made the mistake by authorizing that permit in that it doesn't meet the criteria of not producing noxious noise to the neighbors. But anyway, that's...
Is part of the problem having trucks come through and so on at other times than...
No, it's not really. It's just, pretty much it's just the mills and chainsaw noise, stuff like that.
Are there...
It's just not, it's not what I would consider normal for a residential area or appropriate for a residential area.
There aren't any better hours or days, it's just kind of... I see it's your home, and when you're there, you'd appreciate it was quiet, but are there days that would work, like if you're at work, or...
Well, that's, right now, that's the, in the permit, it says Monday through Friday, I think, like 8 to 4:30 or something like that. Not operating on holidays and stuff like that. Yeah, and that, I certainly appreciate that. I'm getting close to retirement, and I'm going to be spending a lot more time at home, and I think it's disappointing to have to listen to a sawmill for many hours. Not, it's not continuous every day, 7 days a week or anything like that, but it's often hour after hour, day after day. Not always, but it can be that way when we've got wood to mill. Any other questions?
Is there some sort of like truck or something you can park in between the mill and
Well, the mill is pretty much against the tree line, and so I believe the road access is on the opposite side of the mill from...
And the building is between the mill and Russ's place.
Yeah, it's about 200 feet from the mill to my house.
And your properties are adjoining?
Yeah.
All right. Well, basically, it sounds like it comes down to if we think it's reasonable to be in residential, is what it sounds like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Else?
Thank you, Russ.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
If I may. Under the ordinance 1972-110, suspension or revocation of a conditional use permit, so there's some guidance in the code about when the commission can suspend or revoke a conditional use permit. And that's only if the permit is issued in error or on the basis of incorrect information supplied, or if it's in violation of any ordinance or regulation or any provision of this code, and also if the conditions or the terms of the permit are not being met. So there's a pretty limited reason why, and you would have to, state that reason and then, provide justification and evidence of that if you were going to propose any changes.
I'll yell at you, Chris. For the conditional use permit, I do have a question. When you issue someone a conditional use permit, is there a different set of noise regulations as far as, the borough has noise? There is no? What happens when my neighbor's dog barks? I thought there couldn't be, I thought there wasn't allowed to be too much noise in the evening, or, no, I just made that up.
What's been tried to be addressed by the operating hours.
Right.
And such.
But whether the caliber of the chainsaw noise is louder than the borough's stated standards or something, but I guess there is no stated standard.
There's no stated standard.
I'm going to start being really loud at my house.
That'll be a change.
Well, just about everywhere you go in the rural areas out there, you're going to hear chainsaw noise on people's properties. People are cutting up firewood or taking down trees or whatever. That's just more of a reality when you get out the road than it is here in town. So.
Chris, can we get you to speak up, please?
Sure. Okay.
So a conditional use permit's forever, unless basically...
Unless we put in the conditions that it expires with the owner or some other part of that as a condition.
Okay, but there are none with this case.
But there are none with this conditional use permit.
I'm not sure about that. It looks to me like it was to be looked at again and again. I didn't read it just right now. I'm looking for that.
I think on that one, when it was originally issued, but then we brought it, because of the issue, we brought it back up to revisit it.
Maybe.
Yeah, Chris, this is Dave. The other question that I think that was out there was the square footage. When this permit was issued, was it just restricted to 525 square feet as all other home use permits are?
Oh, for his outbuilding?
Well, yeah, just for the entire, we've interpreted that in other instances to be the entire operation, so that'd be a sawmill, whatever else you'd have to run the sawmill with. You have to limit it to 525 525 square feet. I think that was the other issue that was discussed the last time we discussed this.
Was that listed in the,
That's not listed in the conditional use permit, but it is under the definition of a home occupation. It's limited to 525 square feet.
okay. That's in the, and that was in the code at the time that the conditional use permit was listed, or given?
Yes.
Okay.
This was issued.
Want to clarify that.
This was issued back in 2008 or so.
Yes, 2008.
Yeah, even if he is operating in a larger area, if he's been operating in that size for that long, we've kind of set a precedent. Like, how could we just start enforcing that when we haven't for 8 years?
Yeah.
Yeah, Chris?
Yes.
And that's a good point. But the point being is that when this was taken into consideration, it was the 525 square feet was for the mill area itself, correct? Is what they do. It was never took into any consideration any of the inventory or stock that it takes to operate this
Log storage.
storage logs. Yeah, and that's what Dave was bringing up, or I think it was somebody was bringing up. And as I know, in some of the other businesses that have run into this square footage problem, that we had one that had a whole garage full of styrofoam boxes, sir, for instance. Where they were operating was just fine. They were under the 525 or real close to it, but you add up all the area that they had all these styrofoam boxes stored in, and they went, skyrocketed to 1,000 square feet. So that was the stipulation we got that they did and had to move, and so that's the question you got to ask yourself: do the logs count as part of the business? I know we brought that up at that last meeting a year ago, and I went out there and looked, and yeah, sure enough, the logs do take up quite a bit of area, but the mill itself is within size.
Yes.
But the logs are tangible. The logs are there today and they're gone tomorrow. So it's not a permanent
But it's part of the business.
for a short term.
So were the styrofoam boxes. Just saying. I mean, when we were considering that business that we had to go look into, we took in every part that it takes to run that business. So we measured storage area, we measured processing area. I mean, it was all not just where the work was taking place. It was the garage to the side that was storing all this material that was part of the parcel. And we did the same thing when the greenhouse out here, they were supposed to keep, although like the pallets of manure when they got the home occupation out there I forget the name of the greenhouse, but so the square footage was supposed to be limited to that little area. I know they kind of had pallets outside there after a while, but it's just those would have counted as part of the business too. So.
Well, 20,000 board feet is not a lot of timber, considering the fact that most people are limited to 10,000 board feet per person. That's really basically two people's personal use wood a year, if they're taking the maximum. So that really, and knowing the operation of how much those mills can cut, you could process through that in a fairly short period of time. So that's kind of under the conditions that are limiting, it's already pretty well limited as far as what he can do in a year. That's just my comments.
Chris, Can I ask a question of Everett? And my question would be, since it's hard for me, since I'm on the phone, would be how many hours of operation approximately does it take him to cut 20,000 board feet of timber a year?
I can't hear anything.
Yeah.
Oh, that chainsaw work.
Question?
His question was, how many hours does it take to cut 20,000 board feet in a year?
Hours of sawing?
Hours of sawing.
Oh, let's see, 1,000 board feet a day. 6-7 hour day, you know.
Yeah.
You know, if you had saw all day.
Yeah.
What does that add up to hours?
Yeah.
150 hours at most.
That's 20 days, isn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't that 20 days?
Yeah.
It's about 20 days. But, you know, if you're
About 6 hours a
if
day.
you're only sawing a couple hours a day, then it is going to spread out to more days. But but you're looking at what's like 120 hours or something like that a saw time, somewhere around there.
Yeah, here, yeah.
What's your average, Everett, for, like, if just a regular person comes to you, what is the average saw order?
Oh, boy, I don't know if there is an average.
Okay.
Some folks, you know, they go out and they get their 10,000 board feet.
Mm-hmm.
Cut it. Other people just want a couple boards.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You couldn't even guesstimate, you know, what time of year is going to be busier, or it just whenever it's convenient for people to go out and harvest their trees.
Yeah, the way I operate, you know, I kind of work on my own schedule.
Whenever it feels like it, that's what you're saying. Be your business.
If somebody wants to bring me wood, I say, hey, when do you want it, you know?
Yeah.
And if they're in a hurry for it, no.
Okay.
You know, I've got quite a bit of wood up there that have been there more than a year, you know, people just not in a big hurry for it. If they were, I wouldn't deal with them.
Because you're retired.
Yeah, I do it on my own schedule.
Okay, so we figured it was about 150 hours for 20,000 board feet?
Yeah, or 120 to 150.
Okay.
Kind of depends.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I don't know where we go from here. If there's no reason to remove the conditional use permit, what can we do?
I think the only thing we can do is just really reiterate that he needs to stay within the limitations of the conditional use permit.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I don't know what your feelings are on that.
Well, that's my feeling. He's doing what we've told him to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's not his primary job. It's a service he provides for other people, and you know, he's working with Russ as far as the time that he operates and the days that he operates. And I understand that it does disrupt Russ's peace.
Mm-hmm.
You know, especially in such a, I know where they live, it's a very secluded, quiet area. So any noise is going to, personally, I think any noise would feel loud in that particular space. And I'm sorry that they couldn't work it out, but I don't see any reason for us not to revoke the conditional use permit.
I agree with you. I don't see it as much worse than my neighbor running his weed whacker on all the properties around my house.
Dave, do you have any comment?
Yeah, I basically agree. I think it was unfortunate that the past planning commission allowed basically an industrial activity in a residential area, and so it should, but that's water under the bridge. And I feel a lot better after hearing from Everett how few hours a year he actually can operate, and that it takes him to cut 20,000 board feet. So I guess I would have more issues with it if it was ongoing noise day in, day out during the hours of operation that are allowed under this permit. That would make me want to take a look at different action. But if it's just 120 to 150 hours a year, then I don't see why we have the grounds to take any action.
Thank you. So do we have a motion to not take any action on this?
I'd like to make a motion of inaction.
A second.
Mr. Chair, I don't think we need to take a motion on this, do we? I think we just let it lie. I think that's the appropriate thing to do in this.
Only
Yeah.
for review.
I mean, it's on their agenda as a review.
Yeah.
So if you believe you've reviewed it.
We've reviewed it. Okay. Let's move on then.
A lot of stuff to cover.
Yes. Review of the DOT easement for portion of 610 Hagen Drive. Liz, do you want to fill us in on what's gone on with this recently?
So we've talked about this before.
Right.
DOT wants to purchase, and I can barely say it, it's an navigation easement. So they're not purchasing the property, but they're going to purchase an easement so that they can go onto the property to cut trees and make sure that we, as the borough, don't allow anything that might interfere with the runway. And this property is at the approach, right, at the approach of the runway on Hagen Drive. That property has a stipulation on the deed already, which states that the borough cannot use it for anything other than public recreation. So it's not really a fully developable lot. The state has initially requested that we just give them the easement, which the commission said no. And so they've come back with an offer of $7,950 for the easement. And just looking for a recommendation from the commission as to whether the borough should accept that offer or not. And I would say I did talk to the assessor, and he indicated that if we got more than 5, we were doing well.
Do we have a motion to recommend accepting the offer?
I so move.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Nay. I think they could do more to help with the parking situation at the airport, and that's why I'm voting no.
I wish you were right, but I don't think they will.
We already tried that.
We did try that.
Yeah, I think we did. We could remind them, since the state's so short of cash right now, that if they just wanted to, trade for a little property right across from the airport, we'd consider that.
In any case, let's move on. Review and recommendations for an application from Petersburg Borough to vacate a portion of the public easement on 919 Sandy Beach Road. Liz, how do we want to handle this? Do you want to discuss all of this as one kind of big conglomerate and make our recommendations from there, or?
Taking it step by step.
Well,
'cause
I think some things will not necessarily preclude other things.
Right.
So, at least the way I look at it, but maybe other people don't agree. So you might want to
I guess I don't see the vacation as precluding anybody else's interest. You know, it doesn't do anything that is negative. And as far as the rezone, the property is currently zoned public use, and under public use, a permitted use is single-family residential. And so even if you didn't rezone, that property is still developable as single-family. But I think it's misleading because, as you heard, people believe that public use means the equivalent of green space. And I don't think it's fair to put it under public use, especially if we're going to move it into private ownership. So, you know, that's sort of the thinking behind why the rezone, you know, to actually make it what we're intending it to be.
Okay, so we could address it as the vacating the easement as the first thing, because no matter what happens with the property, that easement doesn't need to exist anymore, other than a public access easement potentially.
It would be what we're proposing is a private.
Private.
Yeah. And, you know, there's question of whether it's there or not, but I think if we vacate it, we're assured that it is not there.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we should take care of the easement.
So do we want to take care of the easement first? The commission have any discussion on the easement?
This is the easement that we feel is maybe there or not there?
It may be there, it may not be there, but let's just get it out of the way, because one way or another, it...
This has nothing to do with Chris's...
It has to do with Chris...
Ask, but I don't think it affects...
It shouldn't have, whether the easement exists or not, would not affect the sale of the property, one way or another. Yes, come up.
Maybe I'm the only one confused, but it seems to me that the proposal is to vacate the easement and attach it to Lot 10. And is that not the case, Liz?
The easement is already on Lot 10. So
we're just talking about the portion that's on Lot 10.
Yeah, just the portion that's on Lot 10. There's a 50-foot wide public access easement on Lot 10. And so what the proposal is to vacate all of it and then replace it with a 20-foot private access just for Lot 10. So it's limiting a public access easement.
So the way I see it then, Lot 10 is going to increase in size or how it can be used?
No, it's just, the easement just allows, it's like having, you own the lot, but then you have a portion that people are allowed to access across to get to the water. Okay, if we vacate it, we're saying that's no longer an access. We're just going to narrow it down to a 20-foot access easement.
Does it change how the property owner can use that easement?
It makes more of that property available to be used. It's not going to change how that property is being used.
Well, I mean, can the property owner cut the trees down on it since it belongs to Lot 10 now instead of a public easement?
Even if you own the easement, the land underneath the easement, you can still clear the brush.
You just have to allow
it.
access across that piece of property. That's all.
It doesn't say what you can and cannot do with the trees. You can still
Okay.
cut down all the trees on the easement that crosses your property.
And you're saying right now that easement belongs to Lot 10?
I'm saying it's a public access easement,
There's
so that there's a public
access
interest.
easement across Lot 10, so that there is a 50-foot wide strip of land on that property that if that were sold, say, as a lot, would have to be maintained, that you couldn't build anything on it, you could just, but it had to be available for access. If at some point in time the borough decided they needed to have access across, or, you know.
I guess as the adjacent property owner, I don't want to see things built on that easement.
Yeah.
At 50 feet. I'm looking to have a buffer. So it's hard for me to tease these issues out. And I guess I, would just want to reiterate that as the adjacent property owner, I would like consideration to be able to buy that easement. And with the promise in blood that I would never build anything on it. So I don't know if that helps or not. I guess I'm just want you to understand where I'm coming from on it.
Yeah, I guess right now the trees could be cut if it's an easement or not. So then that doesn't help your cause.
But right now, a building couldn't be built on it.
True.
That's true.
And so if it's absorbed into Lot N and the public access goes away, buildings could be put on it.
I guess I would.
So the nature of it would change.
I was just going to say that if it ends up being sold as one large lot, the private owner could come forward and vacate the easement and request that as well. And to put on, I guess to try and put it in perspective, if you were to purchase that part of it and it remained a public access easement, so then you're going to be allowing public travel through that, or someone could ask to put a trail in or a road in there. So I'm not sure that if your interest is to do a buffer to have a public access easement, I don't know if that really, in the long run, gets you what you want as much as if it was your property as a private easement. You know what I mean? Because then there's no public interest attached to that property. It's purely private property. But again, it's up to you, you all decide how you want to do it.
Well, I think you know what my intention would be, so I'm not sure how to tease it all out. Thanks.
Thank you.
If we don't agree on changing that to be sold, what's wrong with leaving that easement there? Because it's public use.
Inherently nothing. The only interest was that the Assembly already decided to sell the property, and the Planning Commission, the request of the Planning Commission is to make it as developable as possible and make the land as valuable as possible.
Okay.
And so the interest at the time, when we first initiated this, before the other applications came in, was, okay, well, this is a really large chunk of the lot that can't be developed. So to make the lot as valuable as possible, let's reduce that size so that whoever the private owner is can develop it as they wish. So
We're not deciding then whether this should have the zoning or be sold or not.
No.
The city's already decided it, they're going to sell it.
That's what the Assembly has decided, yes. The questions to the Planning Commission are whether to vacate the easement and whether to rezone the lot from public use to single family. The question of the sale is to the Assembly.
Got a question?
Tim, can you come up?
I don't have a question, but as we discussed in August, my patent, when you had the initial drawing, had the easement going across my property. My patent does not recognize that easement. And if you look at DOT's right-of-way through there, granted it's for a different purpose, it does not show an easement in Lot 10 either. So it's sort of this, the chicken before the egg sort of thing. Does the easement exist? And I believe the easement does not exist.
But if we vacate it, then we know it doesn't exist. So.
I agree.
Hey, Chris, could I make a comment?
Sure.
Well, first of all, the Assembly has already indicated that they want to sell this piece of property. So they kind of put, the cart before the horse. I think it did, then, I think the better way for them to approach this process would have been first to put this in front of planning and zoning, and then got her input, and then decided whether or not they were going to sell this parcel or not. To me, that's where this whole process is broken down so far. future, they should run it before planning and zoning so we can give all the interested parties an opportunity to come forward and to let their views be known and what the public wants and what they think and what they don't think before they make their decision. So that said, I feel kind of awkward making any definitive type of decision or wasting our time on this process since they've already decided to sell the piece of property. And I'm sure this is going to end up on their lap anyway, because there's a large group of people in town that would like to see this parcel remain as green space. So I think whatever we do here today, this is going to end up to the assembly. So I think what we need to do is we just need to make them aware of some of the issues, and then we can give them our recommendations. But I don't know whether we need to waste our time making formal decisions on this at this point until they've had an opportunity to have an open public meeting and then let everybody go in front of the assembly and tell them why they think their decision is wrong or why they think their decision is right. That's just my feeling on the whole process. That said, I'm more than willing to go through each one of these steps and take each one of these items one by one.
Okay. I think, my inclination on this is to go through and consider the vacation of the easement and get that off the list, and then consider the rezone and get that off the list, and then make our recommendations to the Borough Assembly and go from there. I think that's what you're saying as well.
That's what I'm saying, but I guess I think what we also need to do is in our correspondence, or one of us needs to go to Assembly and say, look, if you guys are going to put property up for sale in the future, run it before you put it up for sale. Run it by planning and zoning first. It'll save you guys some grief. It'll save us some grief in the future. So just in our recommendations, I think we need to put that little tidbit in there.
Thank you, Dave. Does the commission have any other discussion on the vacation of the easement?
I kind of think it's sort of kicking the can down the road as far as whether or not this easement even exists if we choose to not vacate the easement.
Yeah.
I think there's enough question whether or not this even exists that I'm in favor of doing a quick claim and just vacating it.
Do we have a motion to vacate the easement, or do we need to put that in the motion that we want to keep a 20-foot public access easement? Or Liz?
Yeah, if you want to do that part of it where you maintain that 20-foot, and it's primarily a utility, if they're going to run power lines or anything down there.
Yeah.
But it doesn't require it, it just is there for that.
My only thought to that is that Chris Norris wants to leave this, because that's the only piece she's interested in leaving in a natural state. And if we remove the easement, then it does add one more thing into it. But I guess even if the easement remains, I guess no one can build on it, which is what she wants. If you allow it to be buildable, then I guess both people, it's going to have to subdivide the lot, or I guess I'm not making
the future property owner's going to be right back in front of us asking us to vacate the easement.
Sure enough.
So they can build something on it.
So do we have a motion to vacate the existing easement and replace it with a 20-foot wide private access utility easement?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
My second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 No.
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 Motion fails. Easement remains.
Got 4-2, don't you?
3-3.
No.
2 no's.
Oh, there's, no, 3 to 2, because Dave's can't count.
Yeah, it does.
Oh, it does?
Yeah.
It does? So it's a 3 to 3.
3 to 3, so it fails.
So it fails. You have to have 4 to pass.
4 here.
Just 4.
4 total.
4 total to pass.
Quorum thing, not vote is for.
Yeah. Review of recommendation from Petersburg Borough for a rezone from public use to single-family residential of 919 Sandy Beach Road.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'll also be voting against rezoning at this time because what I'd like to see is I'd like to see this whole process start over from the beginning. And so by voting against rezoning it and voting against the easement, I think this will give this commission and the assembly a little bit more time to figure out a solution that's going to be a little bit better for all the parties involved.
Okay.
So if it fails, I'm sorry, Richard, if it fails with us, it goes back to the assembly, is that what you're saying, Dave?
Yeah, well, we really don't have much say in this whole process because one, they can, whatever we decide, they can overturn. And since they've already decided to sell the parcel, which is kind of putting the cart before the horse, we really can't go through any sort of type of public process to figure out if there's a better way to do this, short of vacating this easement and putting this parcel up as one lot for sale. I mean, I understand the borough's interest in doing that. That's a lot cleaner. That's a lot simpler on their part. But, there's a lot of controversy around this. And I think anytime there's a controversy around a piece of property that's been undeveloped, when there's a whole group of people in town that also have an interest in maintaining this as a green space or public access, I think we need to have a little bit more time to hear some more opinions from the community and the adjacent property owners, which we've heard quite a bit from them already. So what I would recommend that we do is that the borough take this for the time being off the auction block, and either they do it or we do it or a combination of both, and kind of start over from the beginning and see if we can figure out a solution that's going to work for as many people as possible. And so, yeah, if we do not change the zoning on this, if we do not eliminate the right-of-way on this, it makes this property not as valuable as a piece of property to sell. So I guess that's all I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to slow the process down a little bit and take a step back and see if there's something that we can work out that's going to work better. Whether we do it or they do it, I don't care.
My inclination was to suggest to the borough that we leave the zoning the way it is on the property, and if they wish to put it up for sale as it is at this time, they can do that, and if whoever purchases the property can then decide what kind of zoning they want to keep it in. I don't see us making a decision on it. That's my personal views on this. But your discussion.
In my opinion, rezoning this isn't going to change the ultimate use of this. If they can already build single family on it.
No,
Yes, they can.
They can.
On public use?
On public use, you can build single family.
So, and that meets the character of the area around it. I don't see us accomplishing anything by changing the zoning on it.
Besides clarity, I guess. Public use, I wouldn't know that you could build on it. Person, like if I was going to buy the property.
So, single family and public use are kind of the same thing?
They're not the same thing, but a permitted use in public use is to develop a single-family residential under the code. But I think Tor's correct that it's very misleading. and we shouldn't have private property or property that we think is going to be single-family in public use and vice versa. It's not very obvious to anyone that you could do that. But it is allowed.
So do we have a motion on the rezone?
Motion to rezone it single family?
You have a second?
I'm confused.
Hearing no second, motion fails. Moving on. Considering an application from Rob and April O'Neill for a variance from the side yard setback requirement to allow enclosing existing deck 7 feet from the property line at 610 Sandy Beach Road.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Consideration of an application from Amber and Forrest Parsley for a conditional use permit to allow a trailer during construction in the rural residential district of 779 Mitkoff Highway. Yes.
Tell them that they're up.
They're going to call in
Okay.
in case there are any questions, and they're out of town, but they wanted to be available.
Okay.
Does anyone have any questions before we call them? I don't have any questions.
Where is this at?
Page 64.
64.
64, yeah.
Okay.
It's quite a ways up on that
Page 64?
land. Like they said on the application, it's not even seen by the
Yeah.
road.
What does it mean,
I think it's
provisions?
Yeah.
What?
I was just wondering, what does it mean, provisions for wastewater and electricity? I guess on the
That means that
application.
they have to have some way of handling the wastewater and or have an approved system installed before they can discharge any wastewater onto the property.
Okay.
I make a motion to approve. I
I'll
think
second it.
That's exactly what Petersburg is for, is, you start out small and you go big.
Is there a time restriction that they're talking about? I think the last time we approved a trailer, there was a time restriction.
They said
Yeah,
3
that's-
years.
We can put in a time restriction on that.
Mr. Chairman, there's one in there
In the
already.
recommended report, in the
Yeah.
report, in the staff report, yeah, which is
3 years.
page 65 is the recommendations on there.
Yep.
And we have a motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Three.
Aye.
Aye.
And we do have that,
Conditions,
we do have a 3-year
Yes.
yes.
in that?
Chris?
Yes,
As you did put this, did you accepted it as per the
as per the condition.
recommendations?
Yeah,
So with the gray water system,
Yes.
with the system approved?
Yes.
DEC system. Okay, good.
I guess we should have clarified that a little better, but that's,
Yeah, just
yeah. Thank you, Joe. Preliminary review and recommendations on application from Chris Naros to purchase a borough-owned property at 919 Sandy Beach Road.
If we approve this,
This is a recommendation to the Borough Assembly.
Can we approve multiple purchases?
if I understand it, if somebody puts it up for sale, everybody gets a chance to bid on it.
Mm-hmm.
No?
So all you're doing is making a recommendation to the Borough Assembly about whether this portion of the parcel should be sold. You can also make a recommendation as whether it should be sold directly to the applicant or whether it should go to public auction. But ultimately, those decisions are the Assembly's decisions. So what you're doing is just making recommendations as far as, you're looking at the property, yeah, it should be sold, or no, it shouldn't be sold, and we think it should be sold at public auction, or we think it should be sold directly to the applicant.
So if we don't pass this, we're recommending to the council that we think it shouldn't be sold, or it should be talked about more, or what?
Well, I think that's for you to figure out, but as far as the recommendation.
I think we can make a recommendation to the Borough Assembly concerning Lot 10, and pretty much say whatever we want it to say as our recommendation to them as to how to handle the multiple people who are interested and have interest in this lot. Dave, what are your thoughts?
Well, I don't know. Here's the cart before the horse again. What I would like to look at would be if there's a way that we can split this lot up 3 ways. Mm-hmm. So the one,
Oh, Dad?
Oops, sorry. Can you guys hear me now?
Yep. We hear you fine.
We hear you.
Okay, yeah, sorry. Sorry about that. My recommendation would be, one of the recommendations that I would have liked to have made to the borough would have been that we looked at splitting this lot up 3 different ways. Mm-hmm. One, that the 2 beachfront portions be, this would just be one option of many, but the beachfront portions be put up for sale to the 2 adjacent landowners. If there's no access to those 2 pieces of property, then the only way you could access it would be through their property, and that pretty much means they're the only ones that are going to probably want to buy the property. So in other words, we'd have to set this up, and I don't even know if it can be done legally or not that way. And then you'd have a 3rd lot, which would be the lot that would be adjacent to the highway, and that lot would have adequate access. So the way I see it is, if we could work on a solution like that, you would have 1, 2, 3 parcels. There would be additional survey costs that the city would have to add on to the 2 front lots, or even the 3rd lot. And then hopefully the situation would turn out that Chris could have the property adjacent to her, the Keenowans could have the property adjacent to them, and the other remaining part of the parcel, and it'd have to be made big enough so it'd be a biggable lot, would be on the upland side by the road. That'd be one recommendation. But then the other thing is there's a whole group of people out there that don't want to see this property sold at all. So, I think they need to take a look at that aspect first, and I'm sure they'll have to. But, so that's what I would suggest to do on these, on these two purchase.
I think we should make a general recommendation to the Borough Assembly that they should consider the 2 adjacent properties purchase requests, but they also should consider the community's request to keep this property as public use and not sell it at all. I think that's what our recommendation should be at this time.
I second that.
You want to keep it as public use? Just
Right, and Mr. Chair, since you can't put that in a motion, I'll put what you just said in a motion.
So you want to keep that as just a green space just to have, or?
Well, if they're going to sell it, where our recommendation is that they consider the adjacent property owner's requests, but they also should consider the public's request that it stay.
Okay. I think the only public requests, though, are the 2 people trying to buy it that I've heard, I guess.
Well, we've had
a
lot of letters of people and testimony before that, because this was at a previous meeting. So we've got a motion from Dave. Do we have a second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay.
I guess I got one comment. I don't remember the city hardly ever lets a piece of property go without bid process.
Yeah, they usually put it up for bid.
And I think it's kind of hard to justify it under the law, whether it's going to be the bid process or not.
Well, our
They almost
recommendation is
have
that they consider it. That's not
Okay.
saying that they,
I think regardless, they need to go back and think about it.
I do too. I think it's it's a lot more of the issue should have been handled before it was brought to, before it was decided to put it up to for sale.
I mean, Mr. Chair, ideally, what I would have liked to see done would have done with one, we would have vacated the right of way, so there's no right of way, period. And then the front parcels, or I'll call the front part of the lot, would be divided between the Kingdomans and Chris Norris. And there would be no access to that lot. The only way you could access that would be through their property. And so they would be the only people that I would assume would bid on that property. I'm sure somebody could make the case that you could also access it from the beach there. I mean, that's another possibility. But it would make it rather impractical for somebody to purchase that property if there's not an easement from Sandy Beach to that property, except through their properties.
Mm-hmm.
And then have the third lot, then we establish an easement for the third lot, a utility and an access easement off of Sandy Beach to that lot. And that would give us 3 lots, if that's the route that the assembly would want to go, sell the property. I feel that they might ultimately make more money on the deal than they would if they just sold it as one piece and then let somebody else come in there and potentially subdivide it into 2 to 4 lots.
Yeah. Well, I think we've made our vote on a recommendation on that at this point, and I appreciate your comments, though, Dave. Let's move on to the recommendations on the proposed pedestrian trail within the undeveloped right-of-way at Odin Street between Queen Street and Noseam Street, striking the part about Pearl F and Hogue Alley. Does anybody have a motion on this or discussion? This would just be that 1,400 feet of boardwalk.
Just a quick reminder, you need the motion to start the discussion.
Yes.
I moved to approve the trail from Odin to Noseam.
Or we're recommending.
Recommending
approval.
Can we just plain recommend, like this reads it? I think that's the whole trail there, isn't it?
Well, that's why we said between Queen and Noseam, striking the part about Pearl F Street.
I'd like to recommend the whole trail if we find a decent route.
I think that's in the works still.
I think
we need to have they need to have a route figured out before we recommend whether or not the trail, because that's going to be open up another whole realm of public hearing and discussion.
So we need kind of a second, though.
I'll second.
I think there's enough controversy over some of the other parts of it that I want to leave that off right now. I just want to approve the section that they.
I'll second the Noseam to Queen Street. If that wasn't already.
We want to put some recommendations in there to consider ways to protect the adjoining property owners from the unsightliness of trail or people looking from the trail looking into their property. Would that be a recommendation we'd want to add in there to the assembly?
I definitely would recommend that it be well lit in all areas. I have a trail that runs actually behind my house, and it's not well lit. Actually, it's not lit at all behind my house, which is kind of nice because it doesn't shine in my window, but the darkness leads to some behaviors that I would, as a homeowner, not like to see. So I recommend that it have adequate lighting.
Sure. Just, again, I'd like to remind you again that if you're recommending that stretch, obviously that is limiting homeowners that are property owners their access to their property if this trail is in the right of way. And the letter from who the person impacted most by this is in opposition to this. But I'm just so if they ever if you're going to put conditions on there, I say if somebody wants to extend the roadway here or extend utilities down here, that's the only way they can do it. If he wanted to develop that chunk of property, he could subdivide it, and then there's two on the other side. So there is limitations there when you start putting a trail in the right of way.
Yeah.
Or it's developed.
Well, now, if somebody wanted to build a road, wouldn't they just build a road right over the top of the trail, and the trail would still be there? You just walk down the road.
Though,
if
not gravel.
Well, that's one of the reasons to have it.
If it was a raised boardwalk, there would have to be some demo. If somebody decided they wanted to develop that property and were willing to put the money into putting utilities and roadway in there, obviously the trail would be a hindrance to that.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. Maybe we should put that as our recommendation, that it be a gravel trail rather than since it's in the right of way.
It would certainly make the road right away easier to develop if it was a gravel trail.
And it may never happen, but I mean, that option has to be there for people if we're kind of spot they want to develop some land. And obviously that's such a big lot there that Phillips owns that it could be subdivided and utilized. It's what, 400, I don't know how big a city block is, 400 feet, something like that?
So is I guess the lot Aaron Phillips owns, is it the one underneath the word Odin?
It's the one, let's see.
It's on the word Odin.
On the word Odin. It's like an L-shaped lot.
Okay.
It runs the whole block, plus it jogs up towards to the north there.
Okay.
I guess the other thing too is that the property owner across the street from there, and they submitted a letter, and it's on page 86 of your packet. That's the property owner on the other side of the right-of-way from Phillips.
Oh, in the corner of Queen and
Queen
Odin.
and Odin. So just to bring that to your attention, because that's probably the other primarily affected.
And that's another 200 foot of frontage on the.
Yeah. Yes.
Hi, it's Susan Harai again. There would be a little pedestrian bridge, a wooden bridge, because I've walked it, and it goes down where it's not a fish creek, but it's a little drainage.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't, it's not real, I wouldn't want to put a culvert there and run over it. It would be a little bridge. I don't know how many of you have walked out here, but we have a little bridge over a creek over here. So it's just like that, 1.5 inch piling down, and the wooden boardwalk, and it would be about maybe 20 feet, 30 feet. I don't know. I don't have the dimensions, but I just want you to be aware the whole thing couldn't be gravel, but because of that little dip there.
Thank you.
Got it.
Yes.
My name is Thomas Kumps, and my wife Alice just did another comment earlier. I just want to maybe say that when we came to the meeting here today, we thought that the whole proposed trail was going to be discussed, and it's just a fraction of it anymore. Why don't we wait to put the whole trail in from start to finish if there is a route to do it, versus now there's 10% of the proposed trail is what we're going to decide on. It's going to open up only our little secluded little street, which is a dead end to a whole neighborhood. And so we would directly be affected by that. And at this point, I don't really see the need to put a gravel way through a pristine local muskeg area that potentially could be built up after some time. And then also, if it needs to be well lit, that would change quite a bit for us living there, having all at once lights going through the muskeg there. Also concerned about any potential leash laws for dogs, because that has never been enforced, and we have dogs running up into the smokery at times, or eating our soccer balls, whatever. Also, concern is the dog excrement that we find showing up, especially in the spring after everything melts. I think opening up a whole area to our little secluded area does not make sense at this point. I wouldn't be totally against the whole trail towards the post office and then have this little stub be part of that, but at this point I don't see the relevance of opening that up if there might not be any pursuance of the rest of the trail. So that's my point. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion, or should we call a vote?
Figure out what we're voting on here first.
Be a recommendation on the pedestrian trail. I guess we've discussed being a gravel trail rather than a boardwalk, with the exception of the section where it goes over the stream.
This is quite a drastic change from
Yeah.
what was originally, so it may be appropriate to wait till the next meeting to make a decision as well, for allow some more public comment.
Well, I think a trail is worth working on, but
I think maybe this is not the trail we need to put our effort into at this time. There's been another trail that's in new business that has been discussed, which sounds to me like it'd be a much better fit for right now, and that this could be revisited in the future with, once maybe a better route is found to run this trail, if it can be run across airport land. So. So what do we want?
So do we table it?
What would be our best option, Liz?
You've already made a motion?
Yes,
And seconded?
So we vote on it.
Just vote on it, yeah.
Yeah.
And then it will probably come back in a new form at some future date.
what are we
All in
voting on
favor?
then?
Do we restate the motion?
Motion is to recommend the trail as a gravel trail with the bridge across the stream and to provide screening for neighbors.
And light.
Now, if we vote on this,
If we
and,
vote on it and it fails, then it can come back as a,
well, if the rest of the trail, we don't know where that's coming from, how is it going to hook up to this one we're talking about approving?
well, if we don't approve it, then the whole trail comes back as another, in a different iteration.
The reason they're proposing this, I guess, is they said there could be a loop. If people could
Yeah.
walk a loop, they'd walk their dogs and then hit No-See-Em and come back to Nordic. That's the reason it's proposed.
Guess that other trail can come. I don't know where it'd come from, though, is the only thing I'm thinking.
It sounds like it, I don't know. That other trail's in the revisiting stage, like they're
Yeah.
trying to rework it completely and make.
With the
Yeah.
state.
Let's
I
call
think
the vote.
I think we should come back to this
Yeah.
later.
So let's call the vote. All in favor? Nay.
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 Hey,
Okay. New business. Consideration of an application from Don Konings and Gloria Omer for a variance on the front yard setback requirement to cover an existing porch 14 feet from the property line at 810 Sandy Beach Road.
Make a motion to approve?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, John, like you had other stuff to do.
Preliminary review and recommendations from an application from Timothy and Polly Kunneman to purchase borough-owned property at 919 Sandy Beach Road. Did we make a recommendation on this already? Karen? Did we cover this when we were
With the Chris,
With the Chris Norris one and the vacation
Yeah.
and the,
under 9, old business number 9.
Individually.
Well,
I think.
Let's just do the same.
I think I think if you just want to adopt
Well,
the same
since-
recommendation.
Let's just adopt the same recommendation. Do we have a motion to adopt the same recommendation?
I make a
Yes.
motion, yes. We all do.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Consideration of a request from Eric Grunberg for a 12-month extension on a conditional use permit and variance to build within 0 feet of the property line for purposes of rebuilding an existing net house at 207 Hogue Alley.
I just want to clarify, Mr. Chairman, that this has already been, he's already been given the conditional use permit and variance. So all we're doing is granting him 12 extra months.
Right.
I make a motion to approve.
Do we have a second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 yeah, it'll come up next meeting, so we can discuss it then.
No,
No.
no, it's an automatic.
Okay,
It's an automatic
okay.
extension.
Well, it's done. I was curious of Joe's.
It'll come up a year from now,
Yeah.
unless he can,
Hopefully it
unless he.
won't. Yeah.
Hopefully it won't.
Yeah.
Hopefully salmon's better next
He
year.
had some things come up that just prevented him from getting this undertaking, but I believe he will probably in the spring here.
Cool.
Preliminary review and recommendations on an application from Kim Runtup to lease approximately 4,000 square feet of borough-owned property at 908 South Nordic Drive.
I make a motion to approve?
Is that, that's Whitethorn's place, isn't it?
Yes.
It's the old Ace?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Now, this is in an area that, in the comprehensive plan, we identified to be primarily marine-related industrial.
And based on the application, she'll be doing marine signage.
Okay. I just wanted to point that out, so.
I have a hard time with that, what we did with the last one. You don't have to be near the water to signs and cut hair. I want to see the property used, though. I don't know what happens if this,
Sorry.
.30, volunteer fire department. Sorry.
Is the property vacant right now?
No.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
So it's the port area it's borough-owned property, and what the borough has done in the past is issued 50-year leases for these properties, right? And so then the building is privately owned, the land is leased with annual payments to the borough. I think what's happening is the building owner is selling the building and wants to be able to transfer that underlying property and transfer that lease. And the reference in the comprehensive plan is, if what you were referring to, I think, is to limit non-marine uses in and those leases to a shorter time period than the 50 years. I think that's what the recommendation was.
So is the current lease, is he just wanting to transfer what's remaining on a current lease or a new lease? Is this what?
As I understand it, it's a new lease. Otherwise, it would have been a transfer. So,
okay.
I think the applicant is here, but my understanding is it would be a new lease.
Well, I think as far as it being a marine business, Whitethorn could have done his business anywhere. I mean, it wasn't specific. He literally could have done it at the grocery store. And while we're all very supportive of the marine industry, I think that it's...
I think what it's saying, though, is that instead of giving a 50-year lease, maybe we should recommend a shorter lease period.
I think he's already got the lease, doesn't he?
Well, they're requesting a new lease.
For the new owner of the building.
Owner of the building.
Are?
That is what Liz just mentioned.
Yeah, but
Page 115, I think, is application.
Got questions?
Are you getting a new lease or what is it?
Well, I was under the impression I had to get a new lease. Jerry's got like 24 years left on his lease.
Yeah.
So.
I thought you were
Huh?
You don't keep that same lease. It's just a different owner. You make the.
We can do whatever you guys want me to do. I mean.
Yeah.
I don't know how this process works. So, I sat with Debbie for about an hour, and she looked through everything. She didn't see how it, in the ordinance or in her little book, where it had to be marine related. In Jerry's lease, it does not say that, but.
Well, there's a bunch of businesses in that area that aren't very marine operated.
Yeah,
It was
a coffee shop and a gas station, and yeah.
It was something that was brought up in the comprehensive plan, and particularly because of the fact that the port is limited on space of expanding in that area. So that's one of the reasons they wanted to keep the leases to a shorter term for non-marine related in case that becomes an issue in the future. That was what was suggested in the comprehensive plan.
Okay.
So, that's just a guide, the comprehensive plan is just a guideline for us. It's not a law. So, it's just a document that we kind of use to get a general recommendation.
Can leases be transferred?
Oh, the lease is on...
I think it depends on, I didn't read the lease, and so this was forwarded to us from the clerk's office.
115.
I thought they could transfer, but if she's having someone create a new lease, and I'm assuming that it's not allowed to be.
We're creating a new lease under your direction.
Right, so.
You can transfer or create one or.
Well, if she's saying that obviously if it could have been transferred, she wouldn't have been having you put an application in to create a new lease, I would assume.
Might be some confusion on that point.
Well, I don't know. I'm just going by what the direction we got. But I did want to ask, are you reducing the size from what he had? Because there's kind of a brown part and a yellow part.
Well, I guess he gave some of it back to the borough.
Oh, okay.
So it's only what the building is on currently.
So the lease got amended, and a portion of it he gave back, and so it's
and that's
part,
that's
the yellow part.
behind it.
Okay.
Yes.
It's not the 4,000 square feet then?
It is 4,000 square feet.
No, the original piece was 5,000 some square feet.
Okay, but that building isn't 4,000 square feet.
No, it is not. The building is 1,200 square feet.
Quite a bit, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you've got parking.
Then there's parking, and then there is a container van that's heated storage, right at the back part of that building. And then there's a fence thing, and then beyond that is where there has been gear shed storage and stuff, and that is what he gave back to the borough too. I don't want any of that. I just want.
Well, you can rent it out like the city is if you had it.
You don't want to be a landlord?
No.
No.
Cost me more money.
They're
No.
storing bait sheds on it already. It's already used as bait shed storage.
And it has been historically.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
At least 25 years.
Yeah.
We used to live at where the Shipwrights is now.
Oh,
And it's always been bait sheds. So what we're doing is we're reviewing and recommendations on the application. So are we recommending then that she get a different lease amount of time?
How long of a lease would you look for, like minimum, I guess?
Well, on the application, I wrote 50 years because that's what Jerry had, but whatever is the going thing, I don't know.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I just would say, don't say whatever. I think if you're going to finance that purchase, you might want to make sure you have it long enough that the bank is going to, be willing to finance that. So, I mean, maybe it's not 50 years, but I don't think you want like a 1 or 2 year lease and turn around and tell the bank I only have the property for 1 or 2 years. I mean, just my input.
Yeah, on the short end, it'd be like 10.
Yeah, I would say 10, somewhere in the 10 to 20 year range would be more appropriate. So.
I heard the term 24 it already got.
Well, that's
Change
what,
it.
It's what's left.
that's what's left
Yeah.
of Jerry's.
So if we just go with 20, it's pretty close. And it's
I
a
don't
new
think
lease.
we're doing that part.
We're making a recommendation to the Borough Assembly.
I guess it'd be more on, I don't know, I think 10 years would be more reasonable in my mind, just because if it's not going to be directly marine related, then maybe in 10 years there might be something more that could be more applicable.
And it can always be extended in 10 years.
For sure, yeah.
But again, if the length of her loan is 20 years,
Thank you.
then that, there's no reason to say 10 years if the length of her loan is 20 years because the bank wouldn't appreciate it. So if we say 20 years and 10 years down the road she wants to sell the business,
Or you could split the difference and go 15.
but again, still, if you have a 20-year loan, the bank is not going to be very appreciative at your 15-year lease.
Well, we could maybe put a stipulation if she sells a business, then
They have to
the lease
reapply.
expires.
Mm-hmm. So our recommendation,
I need a motion from,
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the application with the recommendations that we amend the lease, proposed term of lease to 20 years, and at the point of a future sale, whenever that may be, the new purchaser will need to reapply for a lease. The term of the lease for the Randrips will cease.
It seems like that's the way it is already. They're having to reapply for a new lease anyway, since they sold it.
I don't know that
yeah, but I
that's
think we
even a
should
question.
clarify that,
Okay.
just for future reference.
Review the application.
And then we make recommendations based on the review. And then the Borough Assembly, aren't they the ones that?
Yeah, the Borough, we're just making a recommendation to the Borough Assembly.
That's my recommendation.
Yeah. Do we have a second?
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 So, Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, it's 20 years and non-transferable,
Yes.
right? And then you didn't say anything about, I didn't get in there in time, but subleasing, so
Non-transferable?
the lease is non-transferable to a new owner.
Correct.
Then you can't sell.
You can't sell your lease of that property because it doesn't, it's
Maybe
not owned by you anyway.
Can't even sell the property.
No, you can sell the building. That's certainly yours, clear. But to get a new lease, the new person, just like they're doing, they have to apply.
That way we've got another chance to review the use of the property.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to point out I recused myself from this vote because I have a financial interest in it.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Adding to our new business is another trail proposal. Do you want to come up and, Liz, have you
You guys got this map over there?
We do. Thank you.
Okay.
Hi, it's Susan Horion. I'm the PI engineer and surveyor. We have a bunch of projects on our long-range transportation plan. It's a 20-year plan. Our transportation program's main objectives is to employ Native Americans to do transportation projects. So this is one of the new projects that's just come up that we would like you to consider. And it came up because when we built the Hungry Point Loop Trail extension, at the top of the hill, you can see directly where Mount View Manor is. And the trail is about 1,400 feet, and it would tie into the where the gravel trail ties into Joa. So there's already a trail that terminates there. The advantage of this would be if you were in a wheelchair or a walker, you could go down that trail, and where at the top of the knob there, you can see Frederick Sound. It's a beautiful, beautiful view. So we were just thinking that might be a good trail for the Planning Commission to consider. The reason it would be a boardwalk is the rest of it's a boardwalk. So.
Any discussion?
Whether we think there ought to be a trail built to the manor?
Whether we should recommend this.
I recommend it. I think it's a great idea. I think it's a beautiful area. I know in my family we use that existing trail quite a bit, and it's lovely.
Yeah,
so.
I use it occasionally as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I don't see much opposition to this. So I think this will be good for the community.
Borough staff have any concerns about this trail? Is it going to?
We just saw it.
Yeah.
Just now.
Well, I think it should probably go, to staff, the rest of the staff, and not just.
Not just us.
Yeah,
We'd like
for
to.
review and just before.
So
whether it be, I don't know.
do we have a motion to postpone until the next meeting?
We could, I don't know if you want us to do a mail out and letting everyone in the area know. We'll do the same thing that we did on the other one.
Yeah, I always
in
good to have
case.
public input, so.
So we'll just put it on the agenda for the next meeting with that for a public hearing.
Okay. Do we need to make a motion on that, or?
Consider
Okay.
it done. Consider
All
it
right. Review of conditional use permit issued to Galen Burrell allowing dormitories on an industrial zone property at 124 Scow Bay Loop Road. Do you want to give us any background on this?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. So page 118 in your packet, and we received a letter expressing some concerns about a conditional use permit that was issued at Scow Bay Loop Road for bunkhouses. There was concern that there were some trees in between the two properties. They're both industrial zone properties. One has a residence, and then one has the RV park with the bunkhouses. I think there was some misunderstanding on where the property line was initially, on whether those trees could be cut or not, and I think that part has been resolved. The only condition that was put on that permit is to construct a 50-foot long fence along the property line. And Joe went out and checked, and that condition has been met. My feeling is this is an issue between property owners and not so much an issue of the conditional use permit. I don't really see a role here for that. But since it was a complaint and it does involve a use permit, then I felt like we should put it on the agenda for you. And I think everyone's here that might be interested in speaking to it.
So can I ask, the trees that were cut down then, were they on Mr. Burrell's property?
That's my understanding, and Power and Light went in there this week, right? Yesterday? Yeah, and cut down some of the trees that were maybe getting into the line. And my understanding is that both property owners were present when that was
I'll cut down several, but that's
being,
nothing to do with any power.
if I could finish. And both property owners were present when Power and Light was doing that. As far as the other, then I'm sure you'll get to hear all about that.
I guess, yes.
Excuse me, Galen Burrow, owner of Tonka View RV Park. This started out as a maintenance deal for my RV park. Every now and then the alders got to be cut down because they grow into the services along the bank. And I started cutting them and laying them down, and then the complaint was filed. And when the complaint was filed, in the complaint, they said that I'd rolled them over on their property and it was going to cost them. So the only way I could resolve that complaint was cut the property line. And when I cut the property line, when it went down, it cut other trees, to cut the line. But when I went and seen Joe and Liz, I could actually cut anything from my line back over. And that's how it pretty much this has got started. And it is because I'm just doing the maintenance of the park. Thank you. Any question?
These trees, are they some on your property and some on the other?
No, there was none on there. They assumed the line was over farther than what it was. And to be honest with you, by the code, it doesn't matter, them trees, from the line over.
Any additional questions?
No, not for Mr. Burrow.
Thank you. Yes. Yes, please.
Ken Kernwick, this is my wife Gail. We got this letter back from Liz Cabrera. It says she believes the only way conditional use permit can be modified is if Galen isn't meeting the terms of the permit or if the permit was given based on incorrect information. As you know, the permit only required a fence of 50 feet. Well, that's where we were wrong. We didn't know anything about the requirements he had set up. He'd come to us a couple of times to get us to sign that petition so he could put them vans in there. We told him no twice. Then he came back offering to build the whole property line fence and started to do it. And we asked him, do we need to come to this meeting to make sure everything's okay? And he told us no. We didn't have to come. Everything will be fine. I'll build that fence. He started. He got to 60 feet built, and then he stopped, and we were wondering why. Well, he came over to our house and said, I can't afford to build the rest of that fence this year. I'll do it next year. Well, next year was 5 years ago, and we didn't realize till 2 weeks ago into these agreements, it was nothing what we'd agreed upon to get us to sign that petition to let him do it. And now he's cut down all the trees, so we got people looking right into our house. I've strung up a tarp because they're like 30 feet away looking right into our house. All the trees are gone.
All the buffer between, and it's zoned industrial, but its primary use is a trailer park. That's what it's used for. The part that was industrial.
I implore you to go out and look for yourself and see what he did. It's ugly.
And when they came in, they took all the limbs off the trees, but left the trees there.
Stumps are sitting there, just bare stumps sitting there now that he said he's going to come in and pull later. But there goes, all the visual buffer, all the noise buffer. He's got them vans in there stacked up too high. So all them candy workers, which weren't working much this summer, were out there all the time on them stairs partying away. And now it's going to be totally wide open. It's just ridiculous. We want them out of there. Either that or put a fence up high enough to block all the windows of the trailers he's got in there. Because now the fence goes right to the bottom of everybody's windows, so they're just sitting there looking in their house all the time.
How high?
That wasn't what we signed to get.
How tall is the fence?
Like, what is it, 5 feet?
6 feet. But they're up higher than we are.
They're
look
double
down.
stacked?
Yeah.
Those trailers
Container
are,
van?
but all his other trailers he rents, the windows are right there over that fence, so with all the trees gone, they're all just sitting there looking right in their windows. We just feel invaded. It's ridiculous.
We had privacy before, and now we
It's all
have
just
none.
happened in a matter of a couple of weeks, and we try to talk to him about it, and we're going to protect myself too. Gail went to him and said, Galen, why are you doing this? I'm the only one in the neighborhood that likes you. He goes, well, the lady on the corner does. That's the way he is. His own sister tried, on the other property line, tried to stop us from signing that to let him do that. But we were trying to feel sorry for him, and it just turned around and bit us in the butt. I mean, to really understand it, you got to go out there and look for yourself. It's ridiculous. Our neighbors are just going, what in the hell happened? Well, ask him.
What do you?
That's not what we wanted at all.
What would your recommendation be then?
That we
We
get a
want
buffer.
them vans out there. We want some type of a buffer back in there.
The buffer's been taken out.
I mean, everything's gone now. This 6-inch fence won't even do it. It won't even cover up the windows of any of his renters, let alone the double tall trailers that are sitting there. Next summer isn't going to be any better. Them candy workers are going to be sitting around next summer all the time too. But we didn't know, we've been mad about this ever since it happened, but we didn't know until 2 weeks ago that it was supposed to be explored 1 year later, which is a little bit on you guys because it never got revisited. And I don't mean to blame you. It's more us for believing him is what caused the whole thing. We should have never taken him for his word.
How much property is there on your property between the fence and your dwelling?
His fence?
No, well, yes, the fence that he erected and...
For my kitchen window, it's 33 feet to my property line, and it might be a dozen feet to that trailer, all the trailers that are there.
Okay.
And I drove by there earlier today. The fence is not right on the property line.
No.
No, it sits.
Well, you couldn't really put a fence. The property line is in the ditch.
Right, it's in the
So
ditch.
what good is it to put a...
And the alders are growing kind of in the ditch.
Well, he calls it a fence, but it's a 251-foot property line that's got a 60-foot wall in the middle of it. There's no ends to it containing anything. I mean, it's not a fence, it's a wall. They walk right around it. It's stupid.
Yeah. Now, I know alders grow really quickly because I have alders in my neighborhood. I don't want to put the burden on you, but would you consider putting some alders along that fence line on your property?
We have some.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cut down too. We have
a lot,
on
yeah.
the lower area, we have a lot. We only had 3 or 4 in the upper part where he wiped it all out.
We had cut...
Everything, all our buffer was on his side, on the upper side.
They were
where
real thick,
everything
yeah.
is.
Okay. Would it be something that you would consider, though, just to protect yourselves with this buffer? I mean, you might get, a 6-foot tree or an 8-foot tree in 5 years.
Sig Burrell about doing that.
About putting in some quick trees real
He
quick.
didn't want to do it.
You can't do it in the fall.
Sure, you'd have to do it in the spring. Yeah, so that would be something, I mean, if we couldn't do anything, would that be something that you would consider doing
We already
for
are
yourselves?
considering doing it, yeah.
Okay.
You have a copy of the conditional use permit?
All I have is, the minutes from the meeting.
And that's page 122, 123?
Indeed it is. There wasn't,
I just wanted to see what the conditions were that were put on there.
yeah, there wasn't anything in terms of usually there's a letter or something.
123.
But I would say that generally what was done was the minutes were copied and put into the letter. So once you see the minutes, I think you pretty much see what would have been in the letter.
Which is very deceitful on his part. He knew he only needed 50 feet of that fence, but yet he came to us after he got that done and said, I'll finish it next year. You know, trying to keep us from, if we'd have known that's all he had to do, we'd have been down there in a hot second saying, no way, that was not what we agreed to sign the petition for. We'd have never signed it if we did. That's all we were getting.
Right.
At all.
Yeah, we understand that you feel that you weren't heard from the very beginning.
Yeah.
We understand.
Just like a fiddle.
Yeah.
Didn't you read the conditional use permit, Ken? It says right in there, the fence restrictions.
But you told us you'd finish
You
it.
told us not to come to the meeting, and so we never saw it.
I never said
Guys,
no such
guys,
thing.
let's not get into a big argument here. Has the commission had all their questions answered concerning?
Yes.
Thank you. Discussion?
I like Carly's idea of them, I don't know, the potential for them to plant trees and then they'd be their trees.
Yeah, it's, I don't see under the conditions where there's anything that we can do, especially since both lots are zoned industrial. So,
Just outside of the area of the permit here. That's the whole thing. What they're talking about is an area that's outside of,
I think we've heard enough.
okay.
Thank you.
It's unfortunate that we have neighbors,
Yeah.
especially in an industrial zone, where there's been a residence for many, many years and a trailer park for many years, that are facing this situation. I think just being a good neighbor would go a long way. It started out kind of sour, and hopefully they can move past it. And yeah, we can't really do anything with the permit. He hasn't violated anything. We can't remove it, but we can recommend that maybe good communication happen.
Yeah. And in the future, they try to preserve the buffer between them. You know, in the process of trying to maintain your property, try to still preserve the buffer. In the process of maintaining your property, still try to preserve a buffer between you and your neighbor. So,
You're not required to.
you're not
but-
required to, but it might be a good idea, just,
Alden for 40 years.
Well, Galen, maybe you don't cut quite that many next to your neighbor.
Joe Nelson from the power company come and cut him because he could see the potential danger.
Yeah, we're just saying do what you can. I mean, if it's not.
try to work with your neighbor is what we're saying.
I didn't do this to start a war.
Yeah, we're not saying you did anything wrong, and they didn't do anything wrong. It's just unfortunate that this is the situation that you're here right now.
Mr. Chair, I propose that we take no action on this.
This is just under discussion items, so I would say at this point, we just move on. I believe Liz has an update on the zoning code for us, or something of that nature. Or some information thereabouts.
Yes. Okay. We're all still with me here. So you might all remember Chris Beck, who helped us with comprehensive plan formation and all of that. So he's going to be in town this week because we are working with him to help us rewrite our very old zoning code. Some of the things that we're going to focus on are looking at some changes to the downtown commercial district, the Singley Alley area, and the Hammer Slough area. hopefully, and in general, things to streamline permitting processes and make things a little bit clearer in the code for everyone. So during his visit, he would like an opportunity to maybe talk some big picture ideas with the Planning Commission. We have already scheduled a meeting with downtown property owners, and that'll be Thursday evening, but he'll be here Wednesday, all day Thursday, and then Friday morning. And so before I scheduled anything, I wanted to see if I could talk to you guys about what might potentially work.
Wednesday like tomorrow?
Wednesday like tomorrow, yeah. Not like tomorrow, but tomorrow.
Got a meeting sometime tomorrow during normal working hours.
Is there sometime in the evening we could fit it in tomorrow, or?
I think he has a meeting at 6, but before, 4 to 6, we could do something.
Yeah, I think anytime after about 3, I'll be free.
Okay.
I can be back in town just about any time.
Thank you.
Got to get to haul some stuff from the barge, but otherwise I should be available.
Are you available? I could do it tomorrow, but I have to leave early to make cupcakes for my kid.
Understandable, yeah.
So what time we thinking?
I'm off work at 4, so anytime after 4 will work for me.
Let's do 4 to
4 works.
4 to 6 at the latest. Is that enough time?
We can
okay.
Talk about fun things like roofs over decks and home occupations.
Yes, we get to enjoy all those topics. Yeah. Caretaker dwellings and residential uses of industrial property.
Is there any way I can call in?
I think so, yeah. We'll figure something out. Wait, it's going to be the same number and passcode as you used today.
Okay.
Okay.
And it's here?
I need to check on that because I didn't have a place yet.
Find us a space.
I'll find a space.
Okay.
Oh, and then the next meeting.
Yes.
Yes.
I almost forgot.
Hey, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry I missed it at the first of the meeting, but could we put on the agenda for the next meeting an item to discuss if Liz could look into potential, if we could, what we have to do to change the charter to allow Liz or Joe accept items for public hearings, so we don't have to have people go through a two-step process?
The revised zoning code will not have a two-step process to accept applications. I promise.
That's part of what we'll discuss tomorrow night, I hope.
If you agree and the assembly approves, it will not have a two-step process.
Yes. Thank you, Dave.
Okay, thanks.
You have any more on the zoning, or shall we adjourn?
Date for next meeting.
Next meeting.
So what's our preferred date, guys?
I prefer the week of Thanksgiving.
Or
Are you
after?
going to be here? Because I'm not.
Or of.
November 22nd?
Works
Works for
great
me.
For me.
It works for me.
Yeah, I can be here.
Awesome.
What time?
But Liz won't be here.
4 o'clock?
I can have a meeting.
Joe will be here.
4:10, 4:30?
4 o'clock, 4:30?
4:30.
For 10? I can leave work early.
Doesn't matter to me what time that day. Just
What?
But Joe will be here.
You won't be here?
Tor, will you be here?
Yeah, should be.
Otis?
Yep.
Does 4:30 work for everybody?
Yeah.
fine.
We used to do them at night.
Yeah, that worked too.
Yeah, it doesn't matter 4:30 or night, same difference to me.
Okay.
Package should be a little thinner next week, hopefully.
Yeah.
I could add some extra paper.
Please.
Drawing.
It'll be one-sided.
All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.